All right, and welcome back to the Paisan Sports podcast presented by Elevation 5280 Sports. Dante DePlacido, joined as always by Zach Deal. And Zach, I got to ask, what's the deal with the dream I had last night? I met Conor McGregor at the mall. He lets me drive his Bugatti, and then I nearly crashed into a toll booth. What's going on?
You seriously had that dream last night?
I actually did. I did leave out specific though, because it wouldn't flow as well. But I was driving the Bugatti, and then Conor McGregor utilized cruise control to crank the speed up to 250, and then I slammed on the brakes just before crashing into a toll booth. And I yelled at him. And I was like, "See, that's why I slammed on the brakes. Who goes 250?" And
Was it
then they
like was it one of those dreams where like he just like when you went to go do like when you got into that situation he just appeared and just made that action and that happened, or like you remember being with him beforehand and stuff?
No, like I was like in my dream, I was just at the mall. I was with somebody, I forget who, and then they're like, "Oh shoot, you're Conor McGregor," and then he let me drive his Bugatti, and then yeah, all that happened.
What's like a normal trend for your dreams? Like do your dreams
There
ever
is
make
no
sense? Is
trend.
that like something like if you're like on social media and you see a post about Conor McGregor that day, like maybe something
No,
like
I
that
haven't
happened?
seen anything about Conor McGregor. I don't know where that came from. Usually, my dreams do relate to recent real life experiences, but that one did not in any way, shape, or form. In fact, earlier in that dream, before that whole thing took place, there was like a situation involving something that happened at work recently. But yeah, no, that was completely random. Anyway, though, that's not the actual what's the deal. I just thought of that 5 seconds before going live and just wanted to mess with Zach. But the real what's the deal is what's the deal with Nico Harrison, the GM of the Mavericks, trading a young franchise player for an aging Anthony Davis, and only getting additionally a first round pick in return for that trade. I A very puzzling move to me that is so puzzling. Nobody believed it was real when the news broke. I witnessed it happen live as everybody started freaking out over the tweet before ESPN even confirmed it, and everyone just assumed Shams had been hacked. So, what is going on?
The crazy part is I was actually scrolling, I think, on Instagram, and I have Sham's tweets like notifications on my phone. So I have like 15 people. Sometimes it sucks because I have like the Sixers like Twitter account, like tweets go to my phone too. So if I'm watching the game live or something and there's like a play that might happen, I might get updated beforehand. So there's certain things that I got to take the notifications off. But I have like all the top insiders for each sport on there, and I was scrolling on my phone and I remember just seeing that notification. I just see a trade and I see Luka Doncic and I'm like, what is going on with this? So like the second I got the notification, I actually clicked into it and I read it and I was like, what? But the craziest part was I actually never crossed my mind that the trade was fake. Like I thought it was
Really?
real. Very
I,
get
I, I didn't believe it when I first read it.
And it's
I
funny
didn't
because
believe
I've actually had Sam Amico, who's like another like top like NBA insider, who I just got a notification from right now. But he a couple times has gotten hacked, and like his account was like not anything to do with the NBA, but saying crazy stuff, and he usually breaks a lot of like news and trades. So I have seen NBA trade accounts. I've seen like the I think it was like ESPN's Instagram accounts getting hacked with like coins that people are making that they're trying to get people to buy into and stuff. So I mean, it happens like with hacked accounts and stuff. But yeah, my initial reaction just wasn't that it was fake at all. I actually believed it, and I was like, "Oh my god!" I just started sending. I sent you the text about it. I sent a couple other of my
Oh,
friends in the group
is
that
that
you
how
just.
I heard? Yeah, no, that is how I heard about. Yeah, because you sent it to me like right as it happened. But
I
yeah, I
gave you a little
completely
suspense. I
forgot. I
texted
first
you. I didn't
learned it.
screenshot it. I think I texted you and I said, "Yo, did you just see that trade?" And you were like, "What?" And then I sent it to you and you're like,
Oh yeah, yeah,
"What?"
yeah. No, yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. So yeah, yeah, you texted me, and then I looked, and then the Shams tweet, like when I pulled it up, was from literally 3 minutes ago. So yeah, I guess we both witnessed it happen live. But yeah, everyone in the replies thought Shams was hacked. And then I still didn't fully believe it when ESPN tweeted it because they just said per Shams. So I thought, okay, there's a chance here that ESPN is just getting fooled by Shams getting hacked. But no, it was real. Very mind boggling. I think definitely, I think a mistake on part of the Mavs. And now if you're the Lakers, you now have a franchise player for once LeBron retires. So huge win for the
You have like the modern day LeBron. I mean, Luca, like he's like nowhere near as athletic as LeBron was and still is, but like what they do as a basketball player, the way they facilitate is very
It's just
reminiscent of each
LeBron
other.
without it's LeBron without the defense. You know what I
It's
mean?
LeBron without defense and
And I would say
athleticism.
better shooting. I would say better shooting,
Yeah,
nowhere near as much defense.
yeah.
Which I do think is a key. I feel like in the NBA, your star player needs to be a two-way player, either
And
that
they're
or
giving up. That's the crazy part because like for the Lakers to get abruptly just, come across this trade and, Rob Pelinka just to be asked like, "Hey, do you want," like literally he was on the phone with Nico Harrison and he was asked like, "Hey, would you ever be interested in trading for Luca?" And like, what do you think he's going to say? And then things go so quickly, but he gives up one of the best two-way players in the entire league and one of the best
yeah,
two-way players of all
that's the
time,
thing
Anthony
about
Davis.
AD is don't get me wrong, the Lakers won the trade just because Luka's going to be a franchise player for many years to come. But some people are over exaggerating it a little bit, acting like some people are acting as if AD is washed. He's still giving you 25 a night while playing elite defense. I think he's still averaging like 2.5 blocks per game. He's still an elite talent. He's just not going to be around nearly as much longer as Luke is going to be.
Yeah, it's nothing about like Anthony Davis like coming back in return. Like that's like if you're ever gonna get rid of Luka Doncic, who probably before that happened at the time was probably seen in the entire NBA as the most untradeable player that there is in the NBA. That's why it's so shocking. Like name another player like you can maybe go down the line and say like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, but I think everybody would say that Luka Doncic would be the guy that's not going to get moved out of like the Anthony Edwards and the Jason Tatums and the Jalen Browns of the world. So
Well, I would
and
group Maxi in with those names as well.
I wouldn't say to that extent.
I,
Maxi's a
I
great
no,
player,
I
though.
would, dude. I would. I think Maxi is absolutely untouchable at this point. He's on an Embiid level streak of consecutive 30
Yeah,
point
he's a great
games.
player, but he also has to do that to compensate for like never having his star players around him, which sucks for him because he like feel like his efficiency numbers aren't there this year because of that, and like have the overcompensation that he has to do. But um, the Dallas Mavericks actually got less back in return from this trade because they didn't want to notify Luca because the Lakers actually asked if they could talk to Luca before the trade to see if he would sign a contract extension because that's what part of like the rumors about his conditioning, him ballooning up to like 270 pounds. But when he shows up to the press conference with the Lakers, he literally looks like he's maybe 245 max, if that. And he's also, people say 270 pounds. Yeah, that is heavy, but you have to think like he's 6'7". He's also going to be on the heavier side just in general. He's usually listed at 230, and he didn't look anything close to the 270. They also said another report, like all this bashing of Lucas started to happen, and these reports came out, I don't know, to justify Nico Harrison's decision, but there was a report that they listed Luca out for like 11 days with like a wrist sprain this year, but it was really for him to lose weight for ballooning up to 270 pounds. So I don't know, it just seemed like a lot of people also that were close to the organization were saying that they were getting rid of a lot of the people that Luca was close to and have relationships with, and even players and coaches and executives. So yeah, it's just a crazy situation. Um, like we said, Anthony Davis is a great player, but Luka Doncic was like the most untouchable player in the entire NBA. And that wasn't only like that wasn't the only crazy trade that happened. I mean, we saw a bunch of stars.
Yeah, Jimmy
Can't move on.
Butler to Golden State
Jimmy Butler is like
is
the biggest
definitely a
clown
big move.
nowadays too. That's like something that like if it wasn't like Super Bowl week and we weren't so engaged with the Eagles and stuff, like the Meatball of the week would easily be Jimmy Butler for dragging this entire situation on. Like he's trying to force his way. How many times has he asked out for trades? Like at this point, I'm actually happy that the Sixers never retained Jimmy Butler, even though like the whole like I don't think it would have ever ended up in a good situation. He probably would have not been friends with Joel Embiid anymore, and it probably would have just
Speaking
flared
of
out at some point.
speaking of former Sixers, Ben Simmons is apparently
Looking at a
getting bought
buyout.
out of this contract, and he's going to hit the free agent market. So that's also something interesting. I feel like there was one other crazy ass trade that I'm forgetting.
No, you know, it's not even a sleeper trade if you pay attention to the NBA all the time, but like the move that just like put this team over the top, the Cavs getting DeAndre Hunter was an absolute steal.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's
it's a big move.
I think they're actually going to win the championship now. I think the Cavs are that good.
I think
This
I think they can make it to the finals, but they're such a young team. I don't know if I see them winning.
Yeah, but they have like literally the best profile that you can possibly have. They have two gigantic like twin towers that are like crazy
But
athletic
I feel like in the
and
NBA
accurate.
usually I feel like in the NBA usually when there's like a really young team this talented, I feel like they go to the finals, but I feel like you hardly see them win. The biggest example I can think of is that Thunder team that lost to the Miami Heat. Um I can't think of another example off the top of my head. Maybe the first time Tatum went to the finals. But yeah, I feel like it's not super common for a young team like this to actually win it all. But speaking of young teams trying to win it all, when I say young team, I think I'm more so referring to the defense, although the offense is also very young. Super young defense, though, excluding one player who I do want to talk about at some point. But the Philadelphia Eagles are in the Super Bowl on Sunday. I'm feeling good about it. I'm liking our chances. But as the days have gone on these past 2 weeks, I have grown more confident and more nervous every single day to the point where I just want the game to start already. I can't take this anymore. Just start the goddamn game.
Yeah, I want the game to start. I feel like this, like for the other Super Bowls in the 2000s that the Eagles have been to, this is like the most anxious that I've been for a
Yeah,
game because it's like
absolutely.
it's like not like a surprising feeling to be in the Super Bowl. Like you could have said, yeah, like they were in the Super Bowl a couple years ago, lost to this exact team the way last year went, you would have never imagined in the beginning of this season that they would end up back into this spot. But it's really not crazy because of how talented this team is on paper. But they're just getting contributions from spots and just like people are over exceeding expectations. Like there's so many guys that are fitting in that category that it's just a different feeling. But it just seems like we're like back for revenge and we're supposed to be here. And this is the way that it was supposed to be. So that's why I'm so anxious to just get back on the board and play this team.
I would say so. Me and you have witnessed 4 Super Bowls in our lifetime. Most Eagles fans would probably also say the same because there's a 24-year gap between the previous Super Bowl, the first Super Bowl and the second one. But the first one in '04, right? I mean, we were very young. I have memories of it, but I can't really remember how I felt going into the Super Bowl, how I felt about the team, how much I wanted them to win. It's the second Eagle season I can remember watching, right? So I can't really say much about that. 2017, the feeling was, it was a bit of a surprise that we were that good that year. And then it was also an even bigger surprise we made it to the Super Bowl after Wentz got hurt. And, I remember at first, like my first thoughts being, wow, we're in the Super Bowl. This is absolutely amazing. I don't even care. The fact we're in the Super Bowl, crazy. Then, like a day or two later, my thought was, you know what? Forget all that happy to be here shit. I want to win, right? Because, we had never won a Super Bowl before. It was like, screw all that. This is our chance to finally get a ring. Let's get it done. Let's beat Brady. And we did. Then 2 years ago, we're in the Super Bowl. mindset was so different, dude. Mindset was so different because it was once again like it was a bit of a surprise we had made it that far. We were going up against Pat Mahomes. We already had won a ring. We got that out of the way. So like for me, it was kind of like I really want to win, but like I wasn't like we have to win, which is where I'm at this year because it's 2 years later. This is our shot at revenge. This is Jalen's shot at revenge. This is the Eagles' chance to prove everybody wrong. This is Nick Sirianni's chance to finally shut all the haters up. Jalen Hurts' chance to finally shut all the haters up. Go from just having one ring to having two. Like it just all around the board. I'm so anxious for this game because I desperately, desperately want us / need us to win this game. It really feels like all or nothing this time because, you can't even look at it as, okay, if you lose, they'll be back eventually. They're a young team. No, this is we're back now. You know what I mean? We lost 2 years ago. That's the thought 2 years ago. You know what I mean? They'll make it back. They'll have another chance to win. Okay, now we are back. So now it's time to win it all and accept nothing less than that. So I'm just super anxious. I need them to win.
Yeah, I think you painted the picture like from that perspective, which is interesting. More so for the like when I think about the Eagles potentially losing this game, it's more so about like the Eagles being on the wrong side of history and the not only the Chiefs three-peating and winning 3 championships in a row, but the Eagles being the opponent for 2 of those championships. So um, with those things at stake and just getting to the Super Bowl, it's actually crazy because I think from 2018 to 2020, I mean 2017, I guess you would say the season, and then the Super Bowl being played in 2018, and then you had the Super Bowl from 2023 that was the 2022 season, and then now 2024 to 2025. I feel like each of those teams have gotten better every single year, and it's just not even the same exact cast of characters. That are on the team, but I just feel like out of the last 3 Super Bowl appearances, this is the best Eagles team that's going to take the field, and I feel really confident in this team. 2017, I really just I feel like it was like all like a blur. It was really just crazy. I was just riding a high the whole time. There wasn't even really time to be negative. It just looked like the Eagles were like the best team in the league, and I felt like I felt confident with the Eagles' chances because like the second best team in Minnesota in the NFC ended up being led by Case Keenum. So even with Nick Foles at quarterback, I still felt confident that the Eagles had the edge just with Nick Foles to Case Keenum and that the Eagles had the better team, even though I feel like that Eagles team, if you put it into like different seasons of like the Eagles, like say the 2017 team was like the 2022 Eagles, I don't think they make it anywhere close to being that far. I don't know. I just feel like that was like a spark in the bottle, that 2017 team. Like it was pretty crazy how they made that happen. 2022, they were extremely good. But I feel like this team is just even better. So just the feeling going into this game is the most confident that I've been out of those last 3 appearances. Like you said, back in 2004, 2005, I remember the game. I remember what happened in the game, and I was devastated, cried my eyes out, threw Eagles jerseys in the trash. I was acting like my mom used to call me the 700 level Eagles fan from the Veteran Stadium because I used to just freak out after they would lose and just go the whole 9 yards with it. But just 2017 finally getting over the hump. It just like it was so unexpected because the Eagles like were in such a transition period from Andy Reid and all that's success, but not being able to get over the hump, and then having Chip Kelly having a little spark in the bottle, and then having to move on to another coach that a lot of people didn't think was the wisest, with an unproven small school quarterback leading the way, and then having to switch from that quarterback who was playing like the best player in the league. Everything just came together really well, but I don't know if that could ever be replicated. We haven't seen a team like follow that formula to win a championship again in a very long time. 2022, I was extremely confident going into that game. I knew how good Patrick Mahomes was, but you also have to think that was the second Super Bowl that the Chiefs won. So the last Super Bowl that they were coming off of was the beating that they took from Tom Brady and the Bucks, where they only put up 9 points. And I know their offensive line was extremely banged up going into that game, and that's kind of why a lot of people thought that the Bucks could win that game in comfortable fashion, like they did. But that wasn't like the same dynasty, like on the verge of a three-peat Pat Mahomes that we're
Yeah,
seeing
that's
right
actually something I want to talk about is, I feel like the mindset for the Eagles and the mindset for the Chiefs has got to be so different because you look at the Eagles, this is a team that wants revenge from 2 years ago. This is a team that's hungry to win a championship. And for the Chiefs, I feel like they've got to be feeling a ton of pressure, right? Because no NFL team has ever won 3 consecutive Super Bowls. I can't technically say no team has ever three-peated because technically the Packers did with the final NFL championship game and then the first 2 Super Bowls or vice versa. But yeah, there's got to be so much pressure on them at the moment. And I got to imagine they're feeling it a bit. Meanwhile, you have a very hungry Eagles team that
Well, I
wants to
feel
go
like
after
real
Super
quickly, I
Bowl.
feel like the pressure lies for the Chiefs where it's not like there's any disappointment if they can't win their third straight Super Bowl in a
Yeah,
row. The disappointment lies with knowing that the opportunity that any team's ever going to have a chance to ever put themselves in position to three-peat is very unlikely in itself. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So,
It's not like you're gonna. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it's not like the chances of them getting another opportunity to three-peat after this are very, 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 very slim. Um, Except the Patriots kind of almost had 2 different opportunities. The most recent one, is I think the first 3 Patriots rings, there was 1 year in between 2 of them, if I'm not mistaken. But I know
it
for
was
with
it was 2001 season. So the Super Bowl was played the following year, but 2001, 2003, 2004 is when they
yeah,
won.
so there was 1 year in between, and then
And then in
um
between that, the teams that won the Super Bowl 2002 was the Bucks, in the Raiders game with John Gruden, and that
right,
was
yeah,
the
yeah.
infamous, like, Eagles game too that was mixed in that playoff run, and then 2005 was the Steelers, Big Ben's rookie year when they beat Seattle after Sean Alexander had that
Second
crazy.
year, I think.
I'm
I
pretty
could
sure
be
it was
wrong.
his rookie
Maybe
year.
it could have been his rookie year. But yeah, and then the other Patriots attempt at a three-peat was thwarted in the middle by an Eagles Super Bowl victory. If the Eagles would have lost that game, then that would have been a three-peat for the Patriots, which we didn't know at the time, but they would go on to win a Super Bowl the next year against the Rams, of course, winning a Super Bowl the year before they played the Eagles against the Falcons. Um, so yeah, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on the Chiefs. I feel like they're probably not as desperate to win this game as the Eagles players are, especially not, Jalen and everything he's gone through. Um, the other thing I want to talk about in regards to that, actually, I'm kind of drawing a blank, so I'll mention one other thing I want to talk about. I've noticed a pattern here. Okay, so the first gap of Eagles Super Bowl appearances, of course, was 24 years, 1980 to 2004. Then the gap narrowed after that to the next Super Bowl, which was 2017, 13 years. Then the gap narrowed even more, 5 years to 2022. Then the gap narrowed even more, 2 years to where we are now, 2024 season. Meaning, and this is very much getting ahead of things, but meaning the gap can only narrow by 1 year. Meaning, if the pattern continues, the Eagles will be back in the Super Bowl yet again next year.
Yeah, hopefully you don't just reset it with that jinx that you just put out there, and they don't go on a
Listen, I
crazy
don't
drought.
give it. Here's the thing. I don't mind jinxing that because that actually does not affect nothing I just said has anything to do with the Eagles winning or losing the Super Bowl right now. And that's what I actually care about. So I do not give 2 shits if I just jinx the Eagles going to the Super Bowl yet again next year. As long as they win on Sunday, I don't give 2 goddamn shits if they go to the Super Bowl next year or not. Um,
That's
So
what
yeah.
everybody said when we won the Super Bowl in 2017, and it felt like an
We did say
extremely
that. We
long
did say that. We
and it
all
felt like
for
an
years
extremely
the
long
fan
time
base
until
said, "Just give us
2022.
one. Just
And
give us one." And now we won
and that
another
might
one.
have been like the biggest dumpster fire after that, like after the Super Bowl victory, all the things that transpired, the players that
Yeah.
were brought in by Howie Roseman, after the players that he brought in during the Super Bowl year that got them over the hump, and then the mistakes that he made in between them. I mean, he was almost on his last leg out here because of how bad some of the whiffs were on the things that happened after that. So it felt like a very long 5 years in between that wait for the Super Bowls. But let's talk about this game specifically. You know, I'm not really big on trends from this happening from those years because that's not the teams that are playing on the field. It's the teams that are going to play on the field on Sunday. And let's just start off real quickly. What type of game do you think we're going to get? Do you think we're going to get a high scoring affair, a defensive affair? I think we have the second number two defense in scorings allowed per game, and the number four defense in scoring allowed per game. Do you think I think the over under is set at 49.5 from a betting
Yep.
perspective? We'll talk about some
That's
bets
correct.
later on at the end of the podcast, but what type of game do you expect?
So I'll tell you what kind of game I'm hoping. First, I'll tell you what kind of game I'm hoping for. I want to see the defense play well in this game. The last two Super Bowls we've watched, the Eagles
Well, that's
defense
what
has
I wanted to
been
mention is because the
non-existent.
Eagles have allowed what, like an average of 35.5 points the last two Super Bowls. And just, I
Yeah,
know it's like the two best quarterbacks of all time that they played with two of the best coaches of all time. But I mean, you know, it took that strip sack from Tom Brady. When I will go back and watch that, like when that happened, it was never the thought of like, oh, what could have Tom Brady, like what could have happened if that didn't happen. They obviously went down, kicked the field goal, and then Tom Brady threw the Hail Mary at the end of the game. They got swatted down. That I don't know how if you felt that way during the Super Bowl, or it was just my heart pumping so fast. I thought Gronk could have made more of an effort to try and dive for that ball and catch that tip pass
I
in
think
the
I
end zone.
blacked. I think I blacked out during that final
Yeah,
play.
I mean, Merrill Reese and Mike Quick, like their call on it, like they didn't even believe the Eagles just won the Super Bowl because it
I
was like
do remember. I do
because, like,
remember.
a lot of people also didn't think that, the time like, there was gonna be time still left on the clock, but, when I go back, like, I'm not even specifically on that play, but when I go back and look at that strip sack of Tom Brady, and you look at, like, the position that the Patriots in, I think they're on the 30-yard line, and there's, like, 2 minutes and, like, 30 seconds left on the clock or somewhere in that vicinity of time, like, if he doesn't make that play and we get a turnover the way that I mean, he threw for, what, 515 yards in that Super Bowl, which was absolutely ridiculous. But I mean, that could have easily, if that play's not made, that could have
I
easily
can
went
tell you
south
one
for the
thing.
Eagles.
I can tell you one thing. I remember this so vividly. I was watching the game, at the cigar lounge with my dad and all his buddies. And I'd watched most of the games that year at that cigar lounge. First game I ever watched at that cigar lounge, period, was the Eagles Giants game when Jake Elliott nailed the 61 yarder to win it. And so I remember I was at the cigar lounge watching the Super Bowl. And I remember when Zach Ertz scored the touchdown, I was not even excited. Everybody, we would do this thing where we would blast the Eagles fight song and sing along to it after every touchdown. And after Zach Ertz scored, everyone's like, "Fly, Eagles fly," like getting all hype. I There's a video of it. I've never actually seen the video. If it could ever be recovered somewhere, if you watch the video, everybody's really excited, and I'm just sitting there miserable, not even singing, because I felt the touchdown was a mute point and Tom Brady was about to march downfield and win the game for the Patriots just because, that was how the second half was going. And that's what Tom Brady was so famous for doing throughout his entire career. So when that strip sack happened, I was so excited about it that, like, I didn't even think of like the schematics of the situation. I just thought that was game. I thought when we recovered that fumble, it was game. And then like after it calming down a bit, I was like, oh no, shit, we actually have to like put points on the board here. And then we kicked the field goal. I was like, yeah, that's game. And then I'm like, oh wait, no, they still have a little bit of time left. And then the Hail Mary happened. And yeah. But the other thing I wanted to also bring up was I remember seeing some girl Snap story, and she was like watching the game at someone's house. Like it was like a few Eagles fans and one Patriots fan, one really obnoxious Patriots fan, because I remember it was a video of them watching that final play. And I don't know what the hell this guy saw. Like this is stuck in my brain for years because I don't know what the hell that guy saw. But when the ball reached the end zone, the guy started going, yeah, Gronk, Gronk. And then eventually he realized that Gronk had not in fact caught it. It didn't even look like he did. That's just stuck in my brain for so many years. What a doofus.
No, I just always thought that he had a chance at catching the ball, but yeah, the past 2 Super Bowls that the Eagles have been in, they allowed 35.5 points, which
Oh
if you
yeah. So that is what we were talking about. You asked me what kind of game I expect. I want to see. So yeah, I want to see the defense play well, not only because I'm tired of the defense giving up a ton of points in the Super Bowl, but I just don't think my heart can handle a high scoring back and forth game again. I can't do it anymore. I want to see the classic 2024 Eagles game, the sort of grinded out game where the offense doesn't even look that impressive outside of Saquon Barkley, but the defense is playing very well and the Eagles just like hang on and win it. That's the kind of game I want to see. And honestly, I think it's kind of the kind of game I can kind of expect because it just feels like such a trend this year where you go into a game where the Eagles are doubted and, it starts off a little shaky, but then by the second half, the defense really locks things down. Saquon Barkley really unlocks himself and they end up winning and they end up going on to win it. Typically, with a long drive in the fourth quarter to keep the ball away from the opposing offense. That's the kind of game I'm really hoping for, and I would not be surprised if that's what we saw.
Yeah, well, the fortunate part is the Chiefs have only scored 30 points one time this season, and it was
Yeah.
in the AFC Championship versus the Bills. So if you look at like the teams, there was like a graphic, and it was like all teams that were picking inside the top 10, and then it was the Chiefs for teams that hadn't scored 30 points. There was like 4 or 5 teams this year. So, and the Eagles on turf are allowing under 12 points per game this season
Oh,
in 5
wow. I did
games,
not know. That's actually something I didn't know.
which is like significantly lower. And this is all stats. Like that's actually a stat that was provided. Vic Fangio told the defense that and was hyping them up on those type of stats. So I think the mindset for the Eagles going into this game is they want to have the best defensive performance. I'm pretty sure it probably has been mentioned to them what the past 2 Super Bowls have looked like and how they've allowed that many points and how they want to change that trend and make something different happen. And obviously, a lot of that has to do with them actually playing a very similar, close mold to the team that they're going to be playing on Sunday a couple years back. So, I think the defense is going to be able to play well, but it's just going to have to come down to if they can get pressure because the issue was they weren't really getting pressure on Patrick Mahomes and they kind of let him scramble. And one of the most fatal plays in that Super Bowl a couple years ago was that Patrick Mahomes like 25 to 30-yard scramble that got them down
Yeah.
inside the red zone. That was just an
I
absolute
actually,
up the
I
middle of the field.
actually, after making the Super Bowl, I actually finally rewatched the highlights from that Super Bowl 2 years ago. Up until rewatching that, there was really only 3 plays I actually remembered: the deep ball touchdown to AJ Brown, the Hurts fumble, and the James Bradbury holding call. Outside of that, I didn't really remember anything because I never watched back a single highlight other than, the AJ Brown catch.
Well, real
And I
quickly,
did see that while rewatching it, and it made me upset all over again. The fumble made me upset all over again. The holding call made me upset all over. The
no, real
holding call really
quickly,
made me
well,
upset.
I want to talk about it because you didn't mention that play, and I almost thought it was positive that you're going to mention the play, so I'm going to just bring it up now and get it out of the way. How big of a factor you think special teams are going to play into the Super Bowl? Because
Oh
one,
my god,
Jake Elliott, Jake
the
Elliott has been horrible throughout this playoff run. I think
wait,
Jake
but are you
Elliott had
talking about the punt
the
return
punt
by
return was absolutely
what's his
fatal.
name?
That might be
Kadarius
the worst play.
Tony. Yeah, that freaking killed
That
us
might have
that
been
game.
the worst possible play, and I'm pretty
If
sure we had hands on him like 5 yards into the return, and he broke a couple tackles and just went down the sidelines. And just that play was absolutely fatal to the Eagles' hopes
I
of
think
really
our
putting them
punt
down
I
in the
think our
dungeon.
punt and kickoff return coverage
Or
has
we have
been
such
really
high
good this
leverage
year.
backups now because of like the guys, like we're not just like we don't just had the best players out here and like you know what I mean, and that's just like on the
I
surface, and
mean,
then we don't
look
have
at
any.
what
You know what I
Will
mean?
Shipley did
We have like
against
Keeley
the
Ringo coming down,
Cowboys.
like Nolan Smith
Chile
still plays.
Ringo, Will Shipley,
Nolan Smith
Jeremiah
still plays like
Trotter
kickoff
Jr. They've been
coverage.
really good on special teams this year. Before we talk about Jake Elliott, just to finish my thought there. Yeah, I mean the hold and the fumble pissed me off all over again, and that just added to the really needing them to win this time around. As far as Jake Elliott goes, I'm not as worried about Jake Elliott as other people might be. The reason why I feel like not just with football, but I feel like with sports, this is more of like a gut feeling type thing. But I feel like anytime like you have a kicker who has either been really terrible all year or amazing all year, I feel like they're typically the opposite in those like clutch situations in the title game. I mean, I look at who was the kicker for the Vikings that missed that kick against the Seahawks in like 2015? I
Oh
forget.
man,
Blair Walsh. Blair Walsh. He was
yeah, that was
phenomenal
one of
all
the
year
worst.
and then
Yeah,
missed that
what's his
field
name?
goal.
Being a Ravens fan growing up, Billy Cundiff missed like a 31-yard field goal in New England that would have sent the Ravens to the AFC
And
Championship.
then outside of the realm of football, in terms of the opposite, I think of Bucky frickin' Dent. That's what they call him, Bucky Dent. That gimpy little player for I forget what team the Sox were playing. It might have been the Yankees, but he was. I mean, he was just a disaster of a player. And then I think it was a home run he hit to end the Red Sox season in the playoffs. And then but I just like I have a gut feeling that like Jake Elliott is going to come up clutch somehow in the Super Bowl to like redeem his awful year. I have a lot of gut feelings
Did you
going into
remember
this game.
that he missed a field goal in the 2017 Super Bowl, or missed an extra point in the 2017 Super
Yeah,
Bowl?
I remember seeing a stat that like the Eagles playoff record when Jake misses a kick of some sorts is actually insane compared to
Well,
the
he
opposite.
has like the most insane stat of all time. Like I think going into last game, I don't know how much it changed or what happened, but going into last game, the NFC Championship, he had the highest. He was tied for like the highest field goal made percentage in NFL playoff history, and the lowest extra point made percentage in NFL playoff
Really?
history.
Yeah, I didn't know that. But I did want to talk about gut feelings going into the Super Bowl. 2017,
Well,
I
real
had
quickly, how much of the special teams? It's not even just the special
oh right.
teams. We're talking about that. It's not just Jake Elliott. Harrison Butker is like one of the best kickers in the league. So I feel like the Chiefs have an advantage in that. And he was actually banged up this year and came back. And he was that this year that he missed the one kick because he was like going down to a knee.
I have no idea. I don't even know what kick you're
He
referring
was
to.
like so hurt. It was like it might have been last year. I don't remember. I mean, the Chiefs, like I feel like I watched them even more than I watched the Eagles because of how much prime time and they're always in the big important games. But he was like hurt and he was like going down to one knee while he was kicking the ball and he kept missing. But he's changed that around. He's just a good kicker in general. But not even just that with the special teams. Like there was a huge special teams play in the last Super Bowl when they matched up with Kadarius Toney. And the Eagles in this playoff run have forced 2 fumbles on kickoffs that have given them the ball inside the
Yeah,
30-yard line
and
in
the
3
first
games.
one was the opening kickoff against the Packers. Really, there have been 2 Eagles playoffs games where they've made a huge play on, I guess, the first play, depending at how you look at what the first play is. But yeah, no, I mean, listen, but that's kind of my answer is like I'm not as worried about Jake Elliott because I just like have a gut feeling that you know if we're going to see anything out of Jake Elliott in the Super Bowl, it's going to be classic Jake Elliott. That's just a gut feeling of mine, which does
Do you
make me
think
want.
Andy Reid would get cute? I don't know the Chiefs special teams coordinator's name off the top of my head, but do you think Andy Reid and the special teams coordinator would get cute and dial up something like we saw last week where Tress Way threw one over the top on Jeremiah Trotter Jr.
Don't
In a
even
desperate
remind me of that.
situation?
Don't even remind me of that. I was so pissed when that play happened.
I saw somebody, it was like the NFL memes account was saying that Tress Way has more NFC championship passing yards than Dak Prescott.
I did see that. I did see
Right.
that. Yeah. Yeah. And Kenny Pickett has more snaps in the NFC championship than Dak.
But the
Um,
Chiefs' special teams have also come up huge this year too. They blocked the kick. Was that the Broncos game where they blocked the kick?
it might have been the Broncos, but yeah, I do know what you're talking about.
They got lucky on like another missed kick, but they've blocked some kicks. So I mean, it's special teams could make a huge factor. I know everybody's hoping that the birthday boy and Cooper DeJean can play a factor. I think Britton Covey is actually like, did they say he was out?
I haven't even heard the name Britton Covey
He
in
got activated
a
from the injury
while.
list. I'm pretty sure that he was like attempting to ramp back up, but he might have been already listed out today.
I do know it's been
The only
announced.
reason I'm bringing that up is because like he would, I would assume that they would want like Cooper DeJean in like top defensive form, so they would probably put Britton Covey back there if he was activated.
I guess that makes
He's
sense.
rolled out now. He practiced in full today, but he's been ruled out Sunday. So Cooper DeJean's going to have an opportunity on his birthday to do something special back there. And I know everybody, if you listen to sports radio and everybody gives their predictions for all these playoff games, and every single time it's like these 50-year-old dudes, it's the same profile call every time. 50-year-old dude who's like, yeah, Cooper's going to get 2 picks and then he's going to return a punt 75 yards and break 5 tackles. And that's what's going to happen. And Cooper's going to have his chance to make some plays, especially on special teams. So I feel good about our special teams, though. It's literally just goes down to
I really like our special teams outside of Jake Elliott, but like I mentioned, I have a good gut feeling about him in this game. But before we do talk more about offense and defense and special teams, the one thing, because this is the one thing I was trying to think of earlier, and it came back to me, is I had a gut feeling going into the 2017 Super Bowl that we were going to win. It was just like a gut feeling. I was like, I feel like this is our destiny. We're going to win this game. I had nothing of that sorts going into the last Super Bowl. And on top of that, going back to what we were saying about defense, I almost knew the defense was going to play as bad as they did in 2022 because, and I think I've mentioned this on this podcast before, but 2021, Jonathan Gannon had a huge habit of playing aggressive against bad to mediocre quarterbacks or even good quarterbacks, but then playing soft coverage and playing scared against the elite quarterbacks. And in 2022, the defense looked good all year, but we hadn't faced any elite quarterbacks. So my worry going into that Super Bowl was Jonathan Gannon is going to go back to his ways of playing scared against elite quarterbacks, that one being Pat Mahomes. And sure enough, that was kind of what happened. And the outcome of that was bad defense in that Super Bowl. Now
Well, I'm
going
not
into
going to blame it completely on Jonathan Gannon because
no,
I
I'm not
think
going
he
to
was
blame it
also,
completely on
but I
Jonathan
think he
Gannon.
was
But the
very
point I'm
reliant
getting
on
to,
the defensive line getting home, and like
yeah,
that defensive
but
line was historically good,
I'm
and
trying
they
to
just
get to
did
a
not
point
show up in the
here.
Super Bowl.
The point I'm getting to here is, I wasn't fully confident going into that Super Bowl because I was worried about Jonathan Gannon. This Super Bowl, I don't have any worries on the defensive side of the ball. I don't really have any worries on any, positional group or either side of the ball going into this. I have full confidence in our O-line. I have full confidence in Barkley, in Hurts, the receivers, Dallas Goedert, the entire defense, the secondary, the linebackers, the D-line, the defensive coordinator. I have so much confidence in Vic Fangio. I just think we're a great team. And unlike 2022, there is no aspect of this Eagles team that worries me and makes me believe, hey, if this guy does what I think he's going to do, I don't think we're going to win the game. There is none of that going into the Super Bowl, at least for me.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to like sit here and like completely defend Jonathan Gannon. I'm just saying that in that Super Bowl, I felt like we got completely beat up in the trenches. They ran the
We
ball down
did.
our
Yeah.
throats in the second half, and our defensive line was nowhere near as productive. I mean, we didn't get hands on Patrick Mahomes at all in that game. And I mean, they had a
Yeah,
chance to
Hassan
really
Reddick
put
was
the
a
belt.
non-factor.
Like
And
we had
another
71
non-factor in
sacks
that
and we
game.
had 71 sacks in the regular season, and we couldn't put the nail in the coffin. We had a quarterback that we were up by 10 at halftime with a quarterback with like a severely sprained ankle that was almost like crying to the point of how bad he was hurt. When you watch back like the on-field clips of it and everything. But I feel like every game that you go into, you feel like Andy Reid has the play calling advantage over the defensive coordinator, and that's probably still true to this case versus Vic Fangio. But like you said, like I said earlier, I think over the last three Super Bowls from 2017, 2022 to this year, I think this is the best team and this is the best complete overall team. And they're getting contributions from all levels. And it's not just like one area is being dominated. It's like on defense, all three levels are making plays. On offense, they might not have the passing game that they can always go to it if they need to, but they're more so consistent and have depth and have a bunch of guys making plays on their defense and more so reliant on a certain guys on the offense. But there's only certain guys that you can get the ball to on offense because your offensive line's not going to get the ball. So I mean, with how good their offensive line is, the formula that they have has worked. So I feel good about this game. I feel like I'm not worried about the offensive play calling, the defensive play calling. More so, I just look at the matchups on the field because I think both teams are extremely well coached, and I think that's just not going to matter. It's more so going to matter what's happening on the field. Both coaches may make a mistake in the game, might have to burn a timeout, play clock runs down a little bit early. That was like a big thing about Andy Reid when he was in Philadelphia, his time management. But that's obviously gotten better with Kansas City, but I think this game really comes down to the X's and O's on the field. And I think the coaches are going to put other players in best position to make plays on the field, as cliche as that sounds. But I think the Eagles, as long as they just do the simplistic win the trenches battle, then that's what sparked the comeback for the Chiefs in the last Super Bowl. And I don't want to keep comparing it to the last Super Bowl because there's a lot of players that are here that may still be here, but there's a lot of players that are going on both sides. Almost like all the skill position players besides Juju Smith-Schuster and Travis Kelce are different. And Juju, I mean, sometimes shows up. That's the crazy part about the Chiefs that I was going to talk about in a little bit is like the Chiefs. The scary part about the Chiefs is the Eagles have the better team. I mean, we have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert's a really good tight end, one of the best offensive lines. But you know how the Eagles want to attack you. We're going to get the ball into Saquon's hands. Jalen's going to do some things with his legs. And if it comes down to it, we're going to get the ball into like three pass catchers' hands. With the Chiefs, you don't really know what they're going to do or who they're going to get the ball to. And Andy Reid has so many plays over all the years of just devising plays and being a play caller and all the familiarity and knows what his team can do. He's always creating and inventing new plays. To the point where they just catch you off guard. Like, we don't know if it's going to be an Xavier Worthy game, Marquise Hollywood Brown, who was hurt for like the entire season, what he would do. I mean, they were kind of showing a trend that when Rashee Rice, when he was healthy this season, he was like the number one guy and their number one receiving threat. But it went back to a committee approach, even with the running backs now with Isaiah Pacheco being hurt, breaking his leg, and then them signing Kareem Hunt back. Kareem Hunt almost like took over the number one job as the running back, the number one running back, and he had 200 carries. And even since Isaiah Pacheco's come back, he's like the number two now. But you obviously know Isaiah Pacheco was a big part of why the Chiefs won the last Super Bowl versus us. So, you don't really know what to expect from the Chiefs team. And I mean, with what Patrick Mahomes is capable of as a scrambler and a passer and to make plays off schedule and to make plays on schedule as well. Like, he's one of the guys that can, one of the few guys that can do both. I mean, I feel like the aspect of this game that people are kind of taking lightly is like the Chiefs, with not knowing who's going to attack you and who's which player is going to get the ball in their hands. And like Travis Kelce's kind of fading into like being the number one target that he was for how many years with Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs have two of the fastest players in the entire NFL playing wide receiver for them. That kind of scares me a little bit.
You know what? I see your point, but you can also think about it like this is, when you think about that, one takeaway is the Eagles have more an identity more of an identity on offense. You know, the Eagles know what they need to do. They know what they want to do, and they know how to execute it. Whereas if you're the Chiefs and you're constantly flip-flopping, you know, who your go-to guy is, you know, it's not, you know, it's like it's a whole different game plan on their side, you know, game planning for the game. Whereas for the Eagles, it's like, okay, we know what to do. We know what's been working all year. Let's just keep doing it. So I think you got to look at that as well. And additionally, one thing I wanted to talk about actually is, first of all, I've barely been able to listen to the radio all, you know, this week. I've tried listening to it every time I've been in the car, but sometimes I've had to turn it off. Just because of some of like the callers and some of the host, you know, gargling the Chiefs, which is just insane. But um, one thing, like people, like I was listening one day, and the big topic of conversation was like, well, if the Eagles want to win this game, Jalen Hurts needs to go out there and he needs to throw for 300 yards and he needs to really wow us. Shut up. No, you're so wrong. You're so wrong. That's what you guys have been saying the entire year, going into each game, talking about what you need out of Jalen Hurts in the playoffs, because the way they were winning in the regular season wouldn't translate to wins in the playoffs. And guess what? They won 3 in a row in the playoffs against 3 teams they had already beaten in the regular season, which is hard to do twice in a season, you know, beat them in the regular season and beat them in the playoffs. But the Eagles have shown week in and week out all season long that their method on offense is what works and what wins games. Why on earth would we suddenly switch up what's been working all year to be like, whoa, we need to have Jalen Hurts just start slinging it all game long? No, that is not what needs to get done. Keep pounding the rock with Saquon. Keep, you know, just letting Jalen let the game come to him. And that is how we win. That's how we've won all year. And if we're going to win the Super Bowl, that's how we're going to win it. Shut up with the let's throw all that out the window and have Jalen Hurts come out and start slinging the ball around like he's Brett freaking Favre or something. It's just insane to me. And I just wanted to you know, point that out and get that off my chest. I don't want to hear shit about how we need to see a whole new freaking game from Jalen Hurts and go away from what we've been doing all year. We're going to continue to do what works. God damn it.
Yeah, I've heard the same conversation. A lot of people talking about Jalen Hurts needs to do this, that. I think Jalen Hurts just needs to play that Jalen Hurts knows how to play. I mean, this dude has had success in the playoffs, and he's gotten to 2 Super Bowls now. He's got the most rushing touchdowns of any quarterback in playoff history, and it obviously leads to success for his team. I feel like people just like continue to just devalue like what he does as a runner, like just taking it lightly, even though it's the tush push. It doesn't matter. Getting into the end zone is getting into the end zone. And Jalen Hurts, he might not be throwing the ball to get into the end zone all the time, but I mean, there's not
he
a
is
quarterback
very
that
efficient
frequents
with
the
the
end
ball
zone.
as well. Like
Jalen Hurts doesn't just frequent the end zone for a lot for a quarterback. He's like top like running back numbers type getting into the end zone.
Somebody said like they wanted to see like Jalen Hurts throw for like 22 of 38 that and throw for like 300 yards. That's not what I want to see. That's not the Jalen Hurts.
Well, the last Super Bowl,
Jalen
Hurts
like, we know throws for like 22 of 30, throws for like 230 yards, is very efficient with the ball and doesn't turn it over. Like, why are we switching, like just switching our idea of Jalen Hurts into like a whole different quarterback? Like, why switch it up now in the most important game of the season? It's so mind-numbingly stupid.
Yeah, I mean, the last Super Bowl, he had like 38 attempts. I think he was like 27 for 38, over 300 yards passing. Miles Sanders was like a non-factor in that game.
He was. I know the stat off the top of my head. He had 7 carries for 16 yards. But that's another huge difference going into this Super Bowl is, you know, the chances of Saquon carrying the ball 7 times for only 16 yards are extremely slim.
Yeah, but like I said, I don't want to keep comparing it to the last Super Bowl because there's so many different things. Like, why could there be a chance that Saquon doesn't carry the ball 7 times? I think the only chance would be is if he gets hurt. That's just not the way that this Eagles team is coached and operates and calls plays. So that that's not going to happen. They had the benefit of the doubt with up to date being the most important game with Saquon having what was it 15 or 18 carries in the NFC Championship and still scoring 3 touchdowns, but like had his third fewest carries of the entire season in the most important game up to that point. So he's going to be a little bit more rested. So I know people were trying to take carries off him. There was like the conversation about taking carries off of Saquon like in the very beginning of the season, and that just completely got shut down. I haven't heard that talk maybe since when they started doing it in the Giants game and he went off in the Giants game. And then from that point on, it was like nobody was talking about let's not give Saquon the ball. It's just about let's ride Saquon until the wheels fall off, and then we'll see how far it
Yeah,
takes
I
us.
remember those conversations. Yeah, I remember
So I
those.
don't even think it's not even
Ball.
just going to be like it's not even just going to be Saquon. It's going to be Jalen Hurts has to use his legs as well because he was a huge point. I mean, he rushed for what 3 touchdowns in the last Super Bowl too. So I mean, that's obviously a huge point. He rushed for 3 touchdowns in the NFC Championship. He had the crazy run versus the Rams on the for the first touchdown. So Jalen using his legs is going to be important. He does have to throw the ball. That's obviously a known thing. The Eagles still throw the ball almost 30 times a game. There's more than 30 pass plays called in an Eagles game. It's just a decent amount of the times Jalen Hurts also runs. Or the one thing that we don't like Jalen Hurts to do that I will criticize him for because I'm happy with his performance outside of this is I don't want to see him going and taking those sacks like the 7-yard sacks where he's just sliding down, and I
Well,
don't think
and you know what?
I don't
Actually,
want him going into dangerous territory with hanging the ball out and trying to make a play where he's trying to go Randall Cunningham versus the Giants where he gets upended and he's stiff arming the ground to stay up. I don't want anything like that. Take care of the ball, but I also don't want in the Super Bowl to see anything like where we're taking safeties or sacks that we have a potential to get out of, but we're just like
yeah.
falling down to the ground.
One thing I want to talk about, though, one thing I heard when I was listening to the radio this week is there was a caller who brought up, Jalen Hurts' exceptional passer rating. I don't know if he was talking regular season or playoffs, but then that whichever host was on at the time, counter argued saying, well, his passer rating is great, but he takes a lot of sacks, and that doesn't negatively affect the passer rating. So it's not really as good as it looks, but I thought about at first I kind of agreed with that, but then I thought about it more, and it's like, well, that's kind of why the passer rating is as high as it is because he's taking the sacks instead of forcing the issue. Now, granted, I don't like to see him take a lot of sacks. I think there have been plenty of times where he could have thrown the ball away when he didn't. But would I rather him take a sack than throw an interception? Absolutely. You know what I mean? So that also is part of it. It's just like his game style, his play style, at least nowadays, I feel like it wasn't exactly like this at the start of his career, but his play style, he is extremely cautious with the football.
He wasn't even
And
like that. He wasn't even like that in Brazil. He came back from
yeah,
Brazil.
he came out, dude. He came out slinging in Brazil.
Brazil,
That
he
was
was
that was like a
Brazil, like, he was
different
I don't know
Jalen
if, like, he
Hurts,
was trying to,
bro.
like, "Oh, I'm playing the Packers, let me start acting like Brett Favre," but he was throwing the ball recklessly to the point where, like, I was like, "Am I prepping myself to, like, see the early departure of Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia? Like, are we starting this Carson Wentz, like, trend all over again with how reckless? Because we haven't even seen him like
He had
that before.
4 interceptions throughout the first 4 games. I feel like maybe Jalen Hurts wanted to come out this year like a more
And, like, he
aggressive
had another one, what
quarterback,
was it?
and then we
He had
went
that
two and
flat
two, and he threw that out the window. Is
He had the
maybe
one where they were in the red zone that was almost an 85-yard pick six versus the Packers this year too. Who was it to? Jahan Dotson in the flat, or was it AJ Brown where he threw that ball like real just flat into the flat and it just should have went to the crib? I think it was Keyshawn
Yeah, I think I
Johnson.
know what you're talking about. I
So
don't
he had a couple
vividly
more plays.
remember it.
So, but yeah, I mean Jalen has to just play Jalen football. It's
Yeah,
as simple as that.
extremely, yeah. Play the way he always plays it. Very cautious, utilizing his legs, making checks at the line of scrimmage. That's something
And
you
he's
know.
gonna have to they're gonna naturally have to probably pass the ball more in this game just because the Chiefs are good. They might be down at some point in the game, and the Chiefs defense is a defense that's not gonna allow you to run all over them. Our offensive line's banged up a little bit, so that's gonna be a question mark to see how much the interior of the offensive line is gonna hold up with the injuries that we have there, and the guys just trying to toughen it out and Landon and Cam, and also their most threatening best player on defense is right the anchor of the middle of their defense. So Chris Jones is going to be causing havoc in the inside interior. So that's a favorable matchup for them. I mean, Chris Jones versus anybody is pretty much a favorable matchup. And then when you're going against guys that are really good, but they're still banged up, that's something that's going to benefit them. So, but Lane Johnson said last week, was it this week or last week? I think it was the end of last week. Lane Johnson said that he's going to return next season, so that completely ices out all the
Yeah,
angst
and
of possibly not coming back.
Slay made a similar comment. He said he plans to play again next season. It will be his last season, and he hopes to play with the Philadelphia Eagles. Not to
Yeah,
cut off,
we talked about that last week.
yeah, not to cut off anything else you were about to say, but the one topic I did share with you before we start today is because last week we were talking about Slay and we were talking about if they win the Super Bowl, if that starts to build a Hall of Fame case for Slay, especially if he, gets 2 interceptions next year on top of that to reach 30 for his career. Um, Yesterday we saw it's kind of possible, Eric Allen, a very similar career resume, six Pro Bowls, one All Pro selection at the corner position. He got inducted into the Hall of Fame. Granted, he had a lot more career interceptions, I think like 54 or 58. But if you're looking at those sort of accolades, it's certainly possible. And I was also thinking about as well if Slay plays another year and he plays really well. I think Slay, if he plays really well next year, he gets another Pro Bowl nod to make it 7, just because of, you know, at this year, there was kind of just like a weird feeling that he was washed throughout the NFL community. I think just because of, tying him along with James Bradbury and the Eagles' young secondary outshining Slay. But I think it's reached the point now where everybody's in the understanding that Slay is still an elite talent at corner. And if he goes out next year and plays really well yet again, I think he'll get his 7th Pro Bowl nod. If he catches 2 interceptions, that gives him 7 Pro Bowls. If they win on Sunday, that gives him 7 and the other things that would give him 7 Pro Bowls, a Super Bowl victory, 30 career interceptions if that happens as well. And in that case, I think he has a very legitimate case for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it would probably be down the line. Hopefully, if he does play next year, it was with the Eagles. I think they have a lot of they should have a lot of interest in each other. Like I feel like addressing, they have Keeley Ringo on the roster. They could obviously anoint him if they want to anoint him. I wouldn't not bring Slay back to have Isaiah Rodgers take over his starting spot for next season. I wouldn't do something like that. It would make sense if maybe they believe in Ringo and want to put him out there. And they move on for Slay for that reason. But I think the Eagles should be interested if it's a one and done deal and let him go out as an Eagle. It would be tough to see him play in another uniform, just knowing it's his last season. It probably wouldn't compete at the level that he's competing with the Eagles now. But yeah, the Hall of Fame is going to be a long shot, I think, for Darius Slay. But if he adds to the resume, say he plays one more season, the Eagles win 2 Super Bowls in the next 2 years, and then he has another Pro Bowl, 7 Pro Bowls, 2 Super Bowls.
30 picks.
Say he gets a pick in this Super Bowl, that would give him 2 picks on in the playoffs. It was tough that he didn't get any picks during the regular season this year, but he has 2 picks in the playoffs. And then if he makes some plays in the next playoffs, if all that ends up happening, then he has a shot. So,
Yeah, he definitely has sort of like a last ditch effort to build a case for the Hall of Fame. I think one thing that also helps too is he's had 6 Pro Bowl appearances. 3 have been with each team.
Yeah, I
So,
think that's how we broke it down last week. That makes it more likely for him since he had success with both teams. So,
yeah.
and like he got traded for at like the age of 29, so he was even older then. Like the stigma, like if you're playing this well at corner at this age, like that's a big reason why people are just like naturally saying that he was washed. Like he would get beat on certain plays, and like he has his low lights at times. But
He's made so many,
he's
great
like
plays
the
for
thing
this
about
team this
Slay is
year.
like
It's
when he's
insane.
on, like he's like consistently making plays in the same game. Like I forget which
Yeah.
game it was this year where he was just like absolutely on fire and he had like multiple pass deflections and just was all over the field. And yeah, so for a corner to play this well at this age is very impressive. A guy that we know is playing in his last game as an Eagle, the last guy from the Andy Reid era. This is actually tough because this is like a true ending of an era for us Eagles fans. Brandon Graham is going to be playing on Sunday. It looks like everything is pointing towards that being the case, and he also said it's going to be his final NFL game, all being with the Eagles. So. Brandon Graham has been on the team since 2009. Just absolutely crazy. It took forever for him to get even started.
I don't know if it's been '09. I would
Um,
say 2010 or 2011. I'm looking this up now. '09 doesn't sound right. If it's '09, I'm going to be
it's
mine.
2010. I mean, yeah,
2010,
2010,
yeah. Yeah,
2009.
I didn't think it had been since the 2000s. But anyway, continue.
I mean, that's 1 year off,
Yeah, yeah, I know,
but it took him a while to even get started into his career and really start
yeah,
taking
he
off
was the
way
backup
long.
behind Trent Cole for quite a while.
Yeah, and the thing with him was like Jason Kelsey, it kind of took him a while to even start making Pro Bowls too. But like Jason Kelsey was known as like, was a 6 round pick, but quickly started to make a name for himself as being an underrated center in the league. Like Brandon Graham, like if you weren't in the Philadelphia area, like you would have forgotten that he was even on the Eagles until a certain point in time. And he was consistent. But the Eagles have always like also been a team that has like been very reliant on a defensive line rotation. So they've just been rotating
Mhm.
guys in and out. And even if they invest in a guy in the first round, they'll go out and sign a top free agent or draft another guy with a high draft pick to compensate for all that. They had Fletcher Cox that they drafted in 2012 from Mississippi State around that time. So, Fletcher Cox was always seen as like the guy on the defense. So
Yeah, it's
Real quickly about Fletcher Cox. I was thinking
well,
about
I
this.
wanted to talk about Brendan Graham because you were bringing
Yeah,
it up.
no, I just wanted to throw this out there real quickly because we talked about like how people were kind of like shaming Fletcher Cox a little bit because of how good Jalen Carter is. But I thought about this randomly the other day. Like Fletcher Cox was like the best player on the Eagles for like 5+
Yeah,
years. Jalen
yeah.
Carter like he's great, but like there's a good chance he's never the best Eagle on
Well,
the
I
roster.
think that's also partly because the Eagles have far more top end talent this time around.
Yeah,
None of the Eagles receivers compared to AJ Brown before. None of the run. Well, during Fletcher Cox's run, it was kind of post Shady McCoy, and during that era, none of the running backs compared to Saquon Barkley. So that plays a big part in it where the top end talent wasn't the same as it is now. So that's why Fletch was kind of highly regarded as our best player. But we also had a ton of talent on the O line as well. We've always had a ton of talent on the O line for quite a while now. But yeah, the thing about Brandon Graham, that's actually one other thing I forgot to bring up. That's another reason I desperately want us to win this game is, being that 2022 was originally going to be Jason Kelsey's farewell tour, right? And then they lost the Super Bowl. So he decided to run it back one more year, and then they just, didn't even get close. And then that was kind of just how the career of Jason Kelsey ended. Same thing with Fletch, but it felt more dramatic with Jason Kelsey. Like I want better for Brandon Graham. I want to avenge Jason Kelsey. And I want better for Brandon Graham. I don't want Brandon Graham to have to suffer what Jason Kelsey suffered. And I want him to ride off into the sunset. as a Super Bowl champion. And, that's why if the Eagles win on Sunday, then no part of me is going to be upset that Brandon Graham is retiring. It's going to be sad to see him go, but I'll just be so happy for him to be able to ride off into the sunset like that, that I won't, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's like, um, don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened, So that's another huge reason I really want the Eagles to win on Sunday.
Yeah, it's just like for like somebody like our age, it's like crazy because like it's not even like like throughout our adulthood. It's like us like being like 10 years old. Like he's on the roster when we're like literally in middle school, and now we're like almost 30 years old, and he's like still on.
Whoa, 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 whoa,
Yeah,
whoa, whoa.
facts.
No, we are
Facts.
not. Okay, we still have a few more years.
All right,
Shut.
well, whatever.
No,
But you just
don't ever
completely.
say we're almost 30. Just stop. I
The
don't want to hear
facts are
that.
what the facts are, but
I
do
don't
you
want to hear
think
that.
I remember Howie Roseman specifically said a couple years after they won the Super Bowl in 2018 for the first time, he specifically said that he needs to stop holding on to players for too long. Um, and like kind of letting go of some of those relationships. And it's like it was never like if Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelsey wanted to come back, they would have been welcomed back with open arms. I mean, it would have been a little bit tough and hurt the roster a little bit if they would have had to pay Fletch and Brandon Graham on 1-year contracts for like their last hoorah, and then Jason Kelsey as well. They would have limited some of the things. Maybe they don't go out and get Saquon or some of the other moves. Like maybe Bryce Huff, that would have burn a lot bigger of a hole in your pocket if Bryce Huff was on the roster with a contract like that, and then you had those guys left back. But does that like in any way, like it's not like it would never tarnish Fletcher Cox or Jason Kelsey's like resumes or tenures with the Eagles based off of like, oh, they retired and then that's what got the Eagles over the hump because they were on the teams before that had a lot of success. But it is very interesting to have such important vocal leaders on either side of the ball inside the trenches, arguably like the most important position group like as a whole that you need to have depth at to really compete in the NFL. It is really impressive that the Eagles were able to get over the hump with losing 2 leaders in the locker room like that abruptly, that were still playing gigantic roles last season.
Well, I mean, the replacements have just done such a good job. Cam Jurgens has done great at center. He's not Jason Kelsey quite yet, but he's done a phenomenal job. Jalen Carter has been absolutely wreaking havoc. This has easily been, a much improved season from last year. Not that he didn't play great last year, but he kind of ran out of steam after the first half of the season, whereas this year he's just been consistently tremendous. So I mean, I look at it like that. It's like their replacements have done almost just as good of a job as they're known for doing. I think if we had a choice at either Kelsey or Fletch playing one last year here, although I have a ton of love for Jason Kelsey and it would be awesome to see him one more year, I would pick Fletch because it was time to move Cam Jurgens to center. He's done great. Mekhi Becton's done great.
You could
But
always have an extra body on the defensive line
yeah,
rotation too, and that's
exactly.
why
Like
like if we're
imagine
looking.
imagine a D line with Jalen Carter, Fletcher Cox, Milton Williams, Moro Jomo, Jordan Davis all on the inside. That would
Last
just be
year.
phenomenal. Huh?
Last year.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah,
what
I know what you're
that's what I
saying.
mean. Jalen
Obviously,
Carter,
1
Milton
year
Williams, Moro Jomo,
besides
they've
Fletch,
all elevated their
everybody
games.
everybody in that position group that you just mentioned 1 year past last year has gotten better, with Fletch
Yeah,
probably diminishing just based off age. But Fletch was
yeah.
like the best defensive tackle that they had last year, and that's what's crazy. Like he was on this team, and but that's the thing about this Brandon Graham coming back for the Super Bowl is the defensive line rotation. They're probably going to have to put somebody onto the IR or move them or deactivate them. I don't know if they're going to go with the approach of like going like a lot of people have mentioned Nick Gates, who's like the 4th reserve center.
He
That
he's he was ruled as inactive for the
Oh,
game.
so they already did that.
Yeah, let me. I just saw the tweet. Let me see if it's in my previous likes. I don't know. It's not, but maybe ESP. No, I don't think it was ESP. It might have been Elliot. No, not. I'm just saying the whole thing. Oh, here we go. Eagles. Oh, okay, no, he's okay. Yeah, Eagles final injury report out. Britton Covey questionable. Nick Gates, Brandon Graham, CJ Ozuma. Although Brandon Graham is listed as questionable, but he was a full participant in practice today. It's looking like he's going to play. Um, and Elliott Shore finished that tweet by saying, "I'd expect Gates to go on IR and Graham to be elevated to the 53-man roster for the
Yeah, that's
Super
the
Bowl."
thought. I mean, a lot of people thought that Bryce Huff could even be deactivated if we were going
You
like
know
player.
what? I just thought of this on the spot. It's time for my meatball of the week. I know we kind of moved things around, and I was gonna transition to a different meatball of the week. I never really was happy with that meatball of the week. My meatball of the week is Elliott Shore Parks. God damn it! Because Elliott Shore Parks, he's in New Orleans. He's trying Bradley Cooper's cheesesteak, a Philadelphia legend. And in the video, he says, "Oh, I wanted to hate this cheesesteak because of Bradley Cooper, blah, blah, blah." Shut up, Elliott Shore Parks. We all love Bradley Cooper. Stop trying to be different and cool and edgy. Oh, I don't like Bradley Cooper. You all love him, but I don't like him. Shut up. We love Bradley Cooper. You're my meatball of the week, you doofus.
Yeah, I don't even.
And it looked like one damn good cheesesteak, by the way.
Isn't it just like I think it's what Angelo's cheesesteaks? I'm pretty
Well,
sure.
here's the thing about Angelo's cheesesteaks. When Angelo's, first became popular, and they had their cheesesteak going and that caught fire, everybody else started emulating their cheesesteak, with the seeded roll, with the Cooper Sharp and the fried onions. Um, and and so that's kind of become like the new standard for Philly cheesesteaks. That's kind of like essentially like now what you picture when you imagine a Philly cheesesteak. The old school way of like the unseeded roll and the long sirloin steak meat instead of having it chopped up, and the whiz cheese, like that's kind of like sort of out the window now, and it's kind of being left in the dust. And the new cheesesteak that Angelo started with, the seeded roll, the Cooper Sharp, the chopped up meat, the fried onions. That's like the new Philly cheesesteak. A lot of pizza joints in New Jersey are emulating it as well. So yeah, when you look at that kind of cheesesteak, like you do think of Angelo's, but that's kind of what everyone's doing now, and it's the right way to go. Anybody who does a cheesesteak like that, it's usually phenomenal. And I want to give a shout out to a local spot, Johnny D's Beef and Pork in Washington Township, New Jersey. They're doing cheesesteaks, but they're only doing cheesesteaks on Sunday. They do it that way. But what makes it even better over at Johnny D's, that is the most tender meat you will ever have in a cheesesteak in your entire life. I put that on everything. You don't believe me? Go try it. That is one hell of a cheesesteak over at Johnny D's.
That's a pretty solid promo. They should pay you for that.
They should. I'm actually going to clip that. I'm going to send it to Brandon, the owner, who I know personally. His father is very good friends with my father, and I'm going to tell him to pay me for
We
that
should have
shout
been
out.
on that. We could be eating the cheesesteaks in front of
You
us
know
right now.
what? Let's get sponsored by Johnny D's. I
Get them on the
have
phone right now.
decided now that's what we're gonna aim to do.
Get them on the phone now.
I'm going to text him right now. I'm going to text him right now. I'm going to text him right now. I'm going to say.
Tell them you just ripped a fire promo for them on the
I'm going to
podcast. You're
say
so impressed that
I
you had to
just
pause the podcast and
I
literally text
just
them and let
gave you a big shout out on my podcast, and I demand compensation. And I don't have any text with him. So just in case he doesn't have my number saved, I'm just gonna put dash Dante. Um so yeah, we are now sponsored by Johnny D's, I've declared.
You know what's actually interesting that I noticed when I was looking at because I always check ESPN just to look at the matchups, and that's like sometimes I look at the injury report on there. Is that did you know that the ESPN index has the Eagles favored to win the game 56.1%.
I didn't know that.
That's
I
the
do
ESPN.
know.
That's the ESPN index.
I do know on Get Up on Thursday, all four analysts picked the Chiefs to win, and then literally today, all four analysts picked the
Yeah.
Eagles to win. It wasn't the same four, but two of them were the same. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, the two analysts who were on both Thursday and Friday. I think it was Dan Graziano and Jeff Saturday. I could be wrong. I know one of them was Jeff Saturday, but yeah, they just picked the Eagles literally 24 hours after picking the Chiefs. What a freaking mess over there. They should be the meatballs of the week too. We got
Jeff
a lot of
Saturday was
meatballs.
a head coach in the NFL at one point. That's crazy.
Jeff
But
Saturday was a
also,
head coach.
something that's interesting is, did you know that Nolan Smith can become the first player in NFL history to have a sack in every round of the playoffs if he gets a sack in the Super Bowl?
I knew he had a chance to do that. I didn't know that would make him the first player in history to do that.
Yes.
That
Would be
would
the
be
first player in
pretty
history.
special. I think what would be really special is if we saw a big play from Brandon Graham late in the game. I think that would be really special to see, especially
Yeah, but
after
the expectation for Brandon Graham, it's like a great story.
like
We'd love to see him
yeah,
back
like
in there, but I don't want him like taking plays away from where we have him trying to contain Patrick Mahomes late in the game on
I
third
think you
down
should
as a
play.
bench.
I think you should play a small amount of the game.
I
You
think he
know,
should play specifically inside too.
I don't hate. I know. I mean, we really only have three edge rushers. I think give him some snaps on the edge. But yeah, I would say move him inside a bit as well. That's not. I don't hate that. We also do. We have more bodies on the inside than on the outside, as it is.
Yeah,
I
but
am.
they're all just playing limited snaps in general. But like the guys on the outside, they're like Jalen Hunt's taking on a gigantic role. Obviously, Nolan Smith's doing his thing, and Josh Sweat is doing his thing. So we just got to actually get pressure this time, because in the last Super Bowl, going in having a historic defensive line rotation that had like 4+ guys with 10 sacks on the season, 10 or more sacks on the season. And we just could not get after Patrick Mahomes at all or fluster him. And when he had to make plays, he had all the time in the world. And like, I just can't stop thinking about that scramble. That was just absolutely fatal, just right up the middle of the field too.
Yeah.
A classic man coverage breakdown. So this defense is built differently, though. It's a completely different scheme with Vic Fangio that they implement. And they're a lot better tacklers. So with all the dinking and dunking that I think the Chiefs are actually going to try and do in the game, I think the Eagles are going to actually be able to tackle. Like if we're talking about last year's Eagles, like the team that we saw take the field in Tampa and get absolutely blown out of the waters for that playoff game, that team would get destroyed. And that's the team that would be extremely susceptible. And that's almost the team that we saw show up in Tampa in week 4 this year. But things have changed. And obviously implementing Cooper DeJean into the nickel, the slot at the bye
Speaking of
week.
Cooper Sharp, that's Cooper Sharp right there, baby.
It's really crazy to think from that point on, the Eagles are what? Is it 14-1?
Yeah. And the one loss, came without our starting quarterback for half the game.
So, I mean, it's almost as equally as impressive as what the Chiefs did this year. And
Yeah.
the Chiefs had a bunch of nail
Yeah,
bites. But also
absolutely.
the Chiefs winning what, 17 or 18 straight one possession games is an outrageous stat. That just shows that like you need to put this team out. And even if it gets into a situation where I feel like the Tampa Super Bowl years back, where their offensive line, they had like 3 offensive line starters out of that game, and the Bucs were absolutely loaded on both sides of the ball. I mean, they had Gronk and Antonio Brown on
Yeah,
offense, which is
Mahomes
absolutely
was just
crazy.
running for his life.
But he was running for his life that entire game. And you see what can happen if you get him under consistent pressure, even with the weapons that he had. That's also when he had Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill still. So
Yeah, he had a prime Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill.
I
I
mean,
think he has good weapons this year. With like Xavier Worthy has had a very good rookie season, and D Hop still has some left in the tank. So does Travis Kelce. But their weapons don't wow me. You know what I mean? They're
the only
good
thing that scares
weapons,
me,
but
like Travis.
they're not scary. And
Yeah, Travis isn't as dynamic like after the catch as he once was, but he still breaks tackles and still can make things happen and make plays happen. He's not going to bust like a 60-yard run on you, but he can still, get a 40-yarder off and break a couple tackles. But that was the one thing in the NFC Championship that the Eagles looked a little susceptible with, was Reed Blankenship specifically matching up with Zach Ertz and
Yeah, but
Travis Kelce.
like I had mentioned last week, though, is it took Zach Ertz 3 opportunities against the Eagles to have that sort of production. Travis Kelce doesn't have 3 opportunities. It's 1 game, so I think that is a big difference there, is he doesn't have 3 chances to, figure out the Eagles' secondary or figure out Reed Blankenship and have a very productive game. No, he has 1 game to get it done. So I think they're I think that plays a legit role in how well we'll be able to defend Travis Kelce
I
versus
mean, he had the streak until last week of 15 straight playoff games with 70 yards receiving or something like that. So I mean, he's done it versus uh, pretty much everybody. He's not the exact same player that he used to be, but I think that he's still a dangerous player, and that's
But
what
here's the other thing
it's not
too
even
is
just him either.
one other thing about that is, the Eagles were able to let Ertz go off without really hurting them because they bottled everything else up. And that ended up being a winning formula. And it very well could happen again in the Super Bowl, where they let Travis Kelce have a big game, but they don't let anyone else hurt them, and they're still able to win. So I
I
think you
think
got
this
as
is
well.
if you let Travis Kelce get rolling, this is an entirely
No,
different type of
but no, I mean,
Zach Ertz
if you
Travis
let
Kelce
him
might
have a
be
very, I mean,
stratosphere.
if you let him have a very similar game to what Zach Ertz had. I don't mean if you let Travis Kelce go off for 12 catches, 150 yards, and 2 touchdowns or anything, but if you let him have a game anywhere from 70 to 100 yards or so, I think they can allow that to happen, bottle everything else up, and still have relatively good
Yeah, but this is like
game
a
on
different
defense.
type of assignment where it's like the Washington, that might be the only glimpse of success that they were having in the game, consistently. But the Chiefs were as good of a play caller as Cliff Kingsbury is, and able to recognize things and get guys open and scheme them to get open. Andy Reid will exploit you if you see something's working consistently. That's when the deception from Andy Reid comes and really just hurts you. So I just don't want anything like that happening. But on the field, in the trenches, do you think they're going to win the trenches battle? Because, like I said, in the last
Yeah,
Super Bowl in the second
I
half,
think
they
so.
really got beat up on the ground. Isaiah Pacheco was pounding the rock on them, and it just felt like the profile of what they built the entire year for that team just didn't live up to the hype in the second half of that Super Bowl.
No,
And it might have been some to do with the play calling, but I think Vic Fangio is going to be a lot more consistent. They have a lot more weapons of what they can use, and they really have been playing simplistic, just good, keep the ball in front of you football for the entire season. But I think they could even get more dynamic if they need to. But I'm not calling for Vic Fangio to start trying to blitz, call up all these exotic blitzes and throw stuff at Patrick Mahomes to try and catch him off guard or anything. I think they just need to do what they do. And I think the biggest thing that could be something that could hurt the Eagles if they're just not good with their techniques, as in fundamentals of tackling. Like if it turns into a game last year where they're playing Tampa and guys are just catching slants and drag routes and going 50 yards to the crib, breaking 3 or 4 tackles, crossing field, then there's going to be an issue, because that's what the Chiefs do, and that's what they're best at, is getting the ball into the playmakers' hands. They might not have a bona fide route running number 1 wide receiver, but Isaiah Worthy or Xavier Worthy, you do not want the ball in that guy's hands in the open field. It'll be a very bad day for you. So
I mean, I think the Eagles will win the battle in the trenches.
because I think that's the biggest. I think that's the
This
biggest thing of
Eagles
the game.
team, yeah, the thing about this Eagles team, which I've said many times in this podcast, is, and so many other people, in the Philadelphia media have said, is this team, in the trenches, they wear other teams down, right? Because they just play so physical. I mean,
Also, the heaviest offensive line in the history of the
yeah,
NFL too.
yeah, I mean, you just look at the size of everybody; it's insane. Yeah, I was watching the mic'd up footage from one of the games recently, because I wanted to watch all the ones I missed this year, because if the Eagles lose on Sunday, I'm not going to end up wanting to watch them. So I want to watch them all. I think it was the game against the second game against the Cowboys, where you look at Jordan Mailata next to uh, Jake Elliott, and Mailata looks absolutely massive. You look at him next to AJ Brown, he looks absolutely massive. And then you look at him next to like Mekhi Becton, and they look the same. You know what I mean? You look at him next to Fred Johnson, who obviously doesn't start on the O line, but they look the same. So that just shows you how massive the O line is. They absolutely wear down opponents. And like, speaking of mic'd up, like Jordan Mailata shouted out that line from Bane to one of the Commanders players in the NFC title game. He said, "I was wondering what would break first, your spirit or your body." And of course, that was a funny thing he said in the moment, but like, I think that line is so fitting for this Eagles team, where it's like they really wear down opponents to where it's like you kind of wonder what's going to break first, their spirit or their body, because one of them is going to break.
Well,
So
that's what's crazy is like it's like people just flip flop back and forth. And I know the Philadelphia market's always just intense with sports and they're never satisfied or happy with anything. But it's like the Eagles are winning in such traditional football fashion that every old football guy that's been watching football since the 60s or whatever it is, or that's connected to the game, say you need to run the ball and play good defense. Defense wins championships. And then when the Eagles start implementing that in an era and generation that's built around passing the ball and high offensive outputs, and they're winning in the old school, old fashioned style, everybody's all like, oh, well, Jalen Hurts needs to throw for 300 yards every single game. And why aren't they using the receivers that they're paying all this money to? It's like, the people should be happy with the result of what
yeah,
the Eagles and the product the Eagles are putting on the field. Like
yeah,
maybe they're
and
not utilizing everybody and utilizing all the money to the exact like things, but like, do you think this offense is able to do what they do with the clip that the Eagles passed the ball at? Even if they didn't have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and they were still passing the ball like at the minimum of what they do, Saquon Barkley's not going off for what he goes off for if he doesn't have the threat of Devontae Smith and AJ Brown lining up on the outside and potentially being lined up one-on-one with other teams' defensive backs.
yeah, because
And the threat of Jalen Hurts,
it's
even
not
who
like
was
you
it?
can
It
load the
was
box against this team, because you have those weapons on offense that can hurt you if you do load the box. And actually that reminds me of, one final thing I wanted to talk about is, all year we've heard from people outside of Philly saying, "Oh, to beat the Eagles, you just need to shut down the run and make Jalen Hurts throw the ball." That's what you've been hearing all freaking year. You've been hearing it from fans outside of Philly, fans who like to hate on the Eagles. That's all you've been hearing all year is, "Oh, you just need to shut down the run and make Jalen Hurts throw the ball." Um, Two things wrong with that. One, just shut down the run? Are you freaking kidding me? You're going to make it sound that simple to shut down one of the greatest rushing attacks of all time, a runner who rushed for 2,000 yards, who, it goes off for like 115 plus every game, almost every game, like it's nothing. One of the best running backs of all time behind one of the best offensive lines of all time, just shut down the run. It's insanity. And then the second part of that is, and make Jalen Hurts throw the ball. I can't think of a game this year where Jalen Hurts has had to throw the ball and it just hasn't worked out. I simply can't think of a game. Even the game they lost against the Buccaneers, when you look at where that game went wrong, it was kind of a Jalen Hurts fumble that ruined things, not necessarily him throwing the ball that ruined things. You could make the argument, well, it's kind of the same. You know what I mean? You make him throw the ball, maybe he'll fumble it. But still, that was Jalen Hurts all the way back in week freaking 4. So and then you look at games where he's had to throw the ball, like the game against the Steelers, and he really ended up throwing the ball a lot against the Commanders, and he threw it very effectively there. And then you even look at a game he won where Saquon was kind of shut down. It was the game against the Cowboys. Saquon only ran for 65 yards, which is very light for him, and Jalen Hurts was able to beat the Cowboys with his arm. Oh, I thought all you had to do was shut down the run and Jalen Hurts won't be able to beat you with his arm. Well, he did. So I don't even know where it's going with that. There's just one other thing I want to bring up. And bottom line, I feel like this Eagles offense it feels really difficult to stop, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, they have everything that you want. You have a quarterback that can not only pass the ball when needed, he's not the greatest passer by any stretch of the imagination. I don't even think I would say he's a top 10 passer in the league. Passer. Top 10 quarterback? Yes. Is he a dual threat? Yes. Do you have a dual threat running back that can receive and catch? We don't even have to throw him the ball, but he has 2 receiving touchdowns this year on like wheel routes, and he's shown that he can do that. And obviously at 2,000 yards rushing, we have 2 star wide receivers. We have a former first round pick third wide receiver that we don't even use, and that if we did need to implement, he could probably get going if he needed to. We have a solid backup tight end that has had flashes when he's played in the starting role, and we have a very good starting tight end and one of the best offensive lines. So they have everything that you could want in a team. So that's also one of the last topics I had. Do you think Devontae Smith is going to have a big game? Because I think the last 3 games, Devontae Smith actually has the highest yards per game average versus the Chiefs of any player in NFL history.
I didn't know
It's
that.
only 3 games. Granted, there's probably guys in the division
Quick,
that have
I
played against
decided
him
to
a lot
check
more.
real quick. I decided to check the score of the Sixers game. They're getting killed by the Pistons right now, down by 20 in the second quarter. Ugh. Devontae Smith having a big game or not, I don't give a shit. I just want the Eagles to win. I really don't care about personal performances. As long as Saquon Barkley hits that 30-yard rushing mark, he needs to break Terrell Davis's record. I don't care. I just don't care about individual
I just
performances.
think this is different. This isn't this. I mean, we got like the Washington was good, but like a lot of people that are talking about thinking the Eagles are just going to go out and dominate if you're taking away from beating Washington and dropping 55 on them in the NFC Championship. This is a whole nother dog that you're dealing
Oh
with.
yeah,
We're
absolutely,
talking like
absolutely.
Washington would probably like in I don't know like Washington was on their last leg. Like they had an amazing season. They're a great team. That's the worst team by far Jaden Daniels is ever going to play on. I can't even believe that he
I
scraped that.
will
Like
say
that
this.
was
I
like the
will say
Cavs.
this, and this might sound insane, but when you consider the year Jaden Daniels had, and you consider the year Patrick Mahomes has been having, Jaden Daniels kind of scared me a bit more than Patrick Mahomes
Yeah, that
currently
is
scares me.
absolutely absurd to say.
I it
Absurd.
just it just it I don't
That's just
know.
not true, though. That's just not
Well,
true.
I mean, Pat Mahomes has obviously had the better career resume, but and he's
Better
Pat
career
freaking
resume than literally
Mahomes.
every single player
Yeah,
besides one in NFL
I get
history.
all that, but it's just you look at how hot Jaden Daniels was going into that game. You look at how difficult he makes things for the defense with his legs. What he's been doing with his legs all year. And although I was very very confident they were going to beat the Commanders, Jaden Daniels kind of scared me a bit. Pat Mahomes, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I said, he's freaking Patrick Mahomes, but I don't know. It's like I'm not as scared of Pat Mahomes running out of the pocket as I am of Jaden Daniels running out of the pocket. Maybe that's kind of only how I feel. I kind of only feel that way about it in terms of, which QB is more mobile. I think that also is part of it though, is like, you're more scared of the guy who can beat you with his legs, because when you have a team that has such a lockdown secondary like the Eagles have, but you also look at how they've struggled to contain mobile quarterbacks the entire year. I think it's natural you're going to be more scared of the guy who is much more mobile, in my opinion. Uh, so yeah.
I think you're just underrating Patrick. We talked
No, I'm
about.
not underrating Patrick Mahomes.
Well, you didn't even let me
I
finish.
think
You didn't
that is
even let
what it
me finish
boils
what I was
down
going to
to, in my
say.
opinion,
I
is
I said you underrate Patrick Mahomes' ability to scramble. That's what I was going to say.
no, I don't. It's just not on the level of Jaden Daniels.
Yeah,
He
just
can
like
still scramble. He can hurt you with his legs. Don't get me wrong. He's more of but he's more of like a Carson Wentz type in terms of scrambling out of the pocket. Where it's like, he's very good at getting out of there. and starting to move with his legs. But once he starts moving, it's not like as dangerous as like Jaden Daniels if he's on the move.
Yeah, but I mean, also there's just throws that Patrick Mahomes can make that nobody else in the history of football can even think about.
That's very true. I really like our secondary and
Yeah, I
their
think the
ability to run
secondary is
attack.
good, but there's been times where they've been a little bit susceptible and they've gotten their bells rung a little bit. Hopefully that doesn't you know show its rear its ugly head. I mean, the last time I felt like the secondary I was really disappointed in them was that last play in Washington when it was the empty set and they just let the Jamison Crowder of all people just run into the middle of the field and just catch a ball right into the middle of the end zone. I just thought that was the last time, and that was one of the only times this season I was like, wow, that defense really, our defense just got cooked. So hopefully stuff like that doesn't happen. And when you have a good play caller like Andy Reid, that's one of the best play callers of all time, scheming things up, it's going to be tough. So I just wanted to make that comparison because I thought Washington was really good, and I think Jaden Daniels is really good. But with all the confidence and the way people are talking, it's as if like we're not going against the team that's like trying to make history with three-peating and being the only NFL team ever to win 3 championships in a row. So.
Breaking news before we end. Well, not really breaking news, but breaking news before we end the podcast. I did hear back from the owner of Johnny D's. He said, "I got you." So hey, who knows? Who knows? Maybe we're sponsored by Johnny D's now.
Yeah,
Who
well,
knows?
maybe we'll have some promo.
Maybe we'll start the podcast next week. We both got on Johnny D's cheese t-shirts, and we're taking down a cheesesteak. Who knows?
Who knows? All right,
Who
so
knows?
last segment of the podcast, we already gave a nice hour and 40 minutes so far, but to wrap things
Oh,
up
that's
today, we got to give some Paisan picks. We haven't done
shit.
Paisan picks. We're not consistent with them. I'm still giving out
Yeah,
picks in
you've
the
always been
Discord
very
under the What's the Deal
inconsistent.
Sports, but the Paisan picks we talked about doing in the beginning of the season every single week, and we did not do them, but it's
I
only
don't think
right
we
for the
did it
Super Bowl.
once.
So I'll tell you what I have live right now if you want to read. So before the season started, when I was betting on MLB in August, I was trying to take whatever MLB profit I would make that day and put it on some NFL futures. So I ended up getting lucky. I put $100 on the Eagles to win the Super Bowl at plus 1,400. So if they win the Super Bowl, that's 1,500 right there. I
Oh wow.
also, before the NFC Championship, I put 300 on them to win the Super Bowl before the NFC Championship. So that was at plus 180. So they had to beat Washington and they had to beat the Chiefs. They obviously beat Washington. So I took that number knowing that I was extremely confident in the Washington game. I couldn't bet the Washington game straight because I would have had to bet the spread, which would have ended up hitting them winning by 32. But I couldn't bet the money line straight because it was like minus 300. So I just took the Eagles to win the Super Bowl at plus 180. So that's like another 840, I think, right there. So I'll win like 2340 as of right now, just based off like Eagles money
Hmm.
line bets to win the Super Bowl if they just win. I also have an accidental. I had a
Hmm.
free bet, and I
Oh.
don't have the lock on my phone like set to like lock my phone because I'm like usually like it'll lock while I'm trying to like keep my phone open to do something. So I had a free bet that I accidentally placed. That's an absolute missile. So do you want to hear that bet?
Yeah. Let's hear it.
So 5 picks plus 8,000 odds, $20 to win $1,600. Jalen Hurts 3 passing touchdowns. Dallas Goedert to score, A.J. Brown to score, Devontae Smith to score, and the Eagles to win. How do you feel
I
about that?
don't like it. I don't like it.
I don't like it that much
I
either, but
don't
like
like
then
it.
so the thing that's the most unlikely about that bet is like I
The
actually
three
think
passing touchdowns. I
no,
don't see
I
that.
think it's not the 3 passing touchdowns. It's 3, but like them going to 1 to AJ, 1 to Dallas, and then
I
1
could
to Devontae.
I could but I could see that. I don't think that's terribly
That would be
unlikely.
classic. I think that would be
But
the number one thing.
I don't see Hurts passing for 3
The
touchdowns.
best part about this parlay hitting was be like that would put everything to bed about Jalen Hurts as a passer. Like if he like hits his top 3 targets and they each get a touchdown in the Super Bowl, he throws for 3, and the Eagles win the Super Bowl. I think you put all that to bed with that. So that's what I have in now. But yeah, I got those 2 other money line bets that I'm probably going to put some more on it. We're supposed to talk about our best bets for it. So do you have a couple singular bets that you're eyeing up or anything that you've put in so far that you like as the best bet? There's a couple value bets. I actually took AJ Brown, Super Bowl MVP, plus 3,500 odds.
That's pretty good. What is I'm trying
I
to
also
find like
another value
upper.
bet that I took was Devontae Smith first touchdown scorer plus 1,700.
I'm trying to think what is oh, Eagles first drive player to catch a pass. I like Goddard at plus 120. I like that. I'm trying to find the Super Bowl MVP odds. I wonder what Saquon because I wonder what Saquon
Saquon
Barkley
has higher odds than Jalen Hurts. He's
what
second.
what are his odds?
It's like plus 250 or something.
Oh, I love that. I think those are great odds. I think if the Eagles win, the likelihood of Saquon winning Super Bowl
I
MVP
think
is
Jalen Hurts. I mean, Jalen Hurts is stealing push touchdowns from him inside the red zone, and then he throws for a touchdown or two. Like I think Jalen being the
yeah,
third.
but if Saquon rips off a huge run in the fourth quarter to put the game away, I could definitely see Saquon winning Super Bowl MVP. Is there any Eagles defensive players listed? I don't know why I can't find any
Yeah,
of them.
they're all here. I actually just found a different accidental tab that's actually interesting too, though, is you can just bet on the position of the MVP. So quarterback is minus 250. That's probably like the lowest that you'll ever see a quarterback like Super Bowl MVP odds. Like it's not worth
Why
betting.
can't I find? Are you on FanDuel?
I'm on DraftKings right now
Yeah,
looking
I
at
don't know
that.
why I can't. I don't know why I can't find it on FanDuel. Quite annoying. I want to look at the odds for everyone, but I can't. I can't seem to find it. So that's annoying. But I would as long as Zach Bond has good odds, I wouldn't hate
One of my
taking
friends
him.
before the season started took Zach Bond at like plus 50,000 odds.
What to win Super Bowl MVP?
Yeah.
That's pretty damn good,
So
honestly.
Mahomes, I'm looking on FanDuel right now. MVP specific Mahomes plus 125.
How are you
Say,
finding this? What? So you're at the game. Under which tab does it show you this? Because it's starting to stress me out now.
bro, you literally go to the top. It says NFL.
No, I mean I'm at the game, but there's popular same game parlay, touchdown score props, quick bets, passing props. Under which one does it mention Super Bowl MVP?
I just lost it because hold on.
It's bothering me that I can't find it.
Go to all sports. Like go to that all sports tab.
Okay, so get out of the game itself.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
all
Go to all
sports.
sports. All
Where the
sports
fuck is all? Oh, there it is. Okay, all sports. Now what?
football.
Football. Okay.
And then you see how it says like Super Bowl LIX.
Yeah.
You see that more NFL tab that's like on the same like line as it to the right.
Yeah, that just takes me to the tab. Oh, here we go. Yeah, and then it's all there at the top. God damn, why was that so difficult? Okay, show all. So Bond is at plus 12,000. That's great odds. So a $10 bet on that would pay out 1,200 if you win Super Bowl MVP. And then another long shot I like is Nolan Smith plus 17,000.
You know,
I
it's
really
actually a good
like
bet.
that
It's
as
actually
well.
it's like slightly favored, but you can bet the field. It's MVP award Patrick Mahomes versus the field. The field is minus 155. So
Wow.
literally any player besides Patrick Mahomes to win MVP minus 155. I honestly might put a couple $100 on that. Anybody but
That's not
Mahomes.
bad, but I feel like if the Chiefs win, it's a
Yeah,
lock.
it's extremely likely that he wins MVP. But if
Yeah.
you fully confidently think the Eagles are going to win and you want to just take that, then yeah, I mean, you can take
But
that.
at that point, you might as well just take the Eagles money line. But one thing I find interesting here is for Super Bowl MVP, Kari Blasingame is plus 75,000. The fullback who's probably going to see one snap the entire game. I think that's pretty funny. Anyway, though, I really I don't know how to finish that sentence. Instead of it, I'm just gonna say
All right,
let's
give your final prediction. What are you thinking?
like I said, I've laid out everything. I have a big feeling in my gut that this is a team of destiny. I really like our team across the board. There really is no aspect of the Eagles game that worries me. And I kind of have the feeling it's going to be one of those games where the Eagles, have kind of a slow, gritty game throughout, and then they rip off a big Saquon run towards the end and hold on to the ball. And yeah.
What's the score?
I'm not giving a fucking score prediction, man. I've been giving the score prediction all year, and look where we are right now. We're in the Super Bowl. I'm not giving a score prediction.
You're crazy, bro. Always ruining the fun. Always ruining the fun. I'm going to take the Eagles to win. I'm going to take the Eagles to win 31-14. I think they get it done. I think the game's close for a while, and then they ended up
31-14. Wow.
I think they win by a decent amount. I think that's something that you should put money on as a bettor as well, is their alternate spread to win by more than a touchdown. Specifically, if we look at that right now for them to win, if you take the Eagles to win by minus 6.5, that's plus 230. So the Chiefs did lose that Super Bowl. I remember when the Chiefs lost the Super Bowl to Tampa Bay, I took the in-between bands of like the winning margin for Tampa Bay to be in between 21 to 25 points. And I hit for like $500 on two different bets from that blowout that they had. So it could happen. We have seen it happen to the Chiefs before, even though that was a long time ago. But I think the Eagles get it done. It's a close game. Patrick Mahomes makes a mistake. The Eagles are able to, in the second half, in a close game, get a couple turnovers and pull away and just play their brand of football. I think the MVP is going to be Jalen Hurts. I think Saquon's going to have an amazing game, but I think Jalen's just going to do enough to edge it out. And I think everyone's going to be happy, and we'll be celebrating a victory on potentially Monday if we do the podcast as a reactionary, celebratory podcast early in the week.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. There's still a game to be played on Sunday. Let's not start planning what we're going to do for the podcast next week. We still have to win the game on Sunday. But what I will say to your prediction is it wouldn't shock me if this is yet another game that the Eagles are going into, that everyone has them picked to lose, that, everybody's saying, well, this is obviously their toughest game of the season, and they end up winning comfortably. That's happened quite a few times this year. It happened against the Ravens. It happened the first time around against the Rams. It happened in the NFC Championship game against the Commanders. So it would not shock me if that happens yet again. But
they were favorites going into the Bucs game. No, they were underdogs because of the injuries, right?
I would think so. Yeah, they were without A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith.
The other three games that I can remember them being underdogs for, I know they were underdogs on the road in Cincinnati, which they won comfortably. They were underdogs in Baltimore. They won comfortably. But outside, like after the bye week, I don't think there were underdogs in any game besides.
Yeah, but going into the Rams game, there was a lot of hype for the Rams. Going into the Commanders game in the NFC Championship, a lot of hype for the Commanders.
Yeah, but that was the talk of the media. That was like on the books.
But that's what I mean. But that's what I'm.
They were like minus 280 at least.
But that is essentially what I'm referring to. But anyway, we're gonna have to wrap things up here.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for tuning in to episode 84 of the Paisan Sports podcast. Hopefully, we are celebrating the Eagles' second Lombardi trophy next week. If not, we're going to be extremely depressed, and we'll be talking about
the
baseball.
Podcast is canceled next week if they lose.
Yeah, we'll be talking about like deep diving baseball spring training.
We're going to be talking college lacrosse. Okay, we're going to be talking about Florida Gators women's lacrosse. That's what we're going to be discussing.
Listen, lacrosse is fire. I grew up playing lacrosse, so don't be talking about lacrosse like that. Maybe we'll have to talk about like new age wrestling.
We're going to be
That's what
talking
I
about
put in
Jey
my pick.
Uso headlining WrestleMania. That's what we're going to be talking about.
All right, well, we'll be back next week, hopefully at the beginning of the week, like we said, celebrating a victory. So until then, see you guys later. Go Birds.
Go Birds.